Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. The fellas heading to the ACC as we got an interstate rivalry. As the Florida State Seminoles, a team that I'm telling you is very dangerous after this bye week as they get their guys healthy, go on the road to play a Miami Hurricanes team that there were some lofty expectations coming into the season, but there were also a lot of moving parts. And I think it would be foolish for a lot of Miami fans to think this would all come together so quickly. Anyways, it's going to be a good game because these two teams hate each other. This is what college football is about, the rivalry, the hate. Excited to get into this. Before we do, though, again, I just want to say thank you guys for the support, both the Seminole fans and the Hurricane fans. You guys have been absolutely awesome. We've talked a lot of Florida State ball. We've talked a lot of Miami ball. It's been a blast talking football with you guys in the comment section. So if you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. That helps the fellas out a lot. We're almost at 2.3 thousand subscribers, and that is thanks to you guys. We really do appreciate it. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. What are your early takes on this game here?
I mean, start off to say super excited. I think this is one of the underrated kind of rivalries in college football, and I get that the Florida State, Florida might go back a little further, and some people kind of have that. But, I mean, these teams are very much battling for kind of being one of those top dogs in the ACC to challenge Clemson, which hasn't happened yet from really any team in a few years, but obviously battling for recruits, battling for the same kind of prestige and come back to what these two programs should be, what college football I think wants them to be.
Yeah, and in terms of how this game matches out, I want to start with the explosiveness of this Florida State offense. I mean, you look at what they're doing. They're averaging 7 yards of play on offense, and for the lack of consistency sometimes this Florida State offense has with Jordan Travis maybe not being the most consistent thrower, which I think he's vastly improved on this year, they make up for it in finding the big plays. And when you look at this matchup and how Miami matches up against that, that's about what Miami is worst at, giving up those explosive plays, especially through the air. And when you look at the chemistry that Jordan Travis and guys like Johnny Wilson are kind of putting together, that's where I'm most concerned with. You got to think it's a lot for Jordan Travis to find Johnny Wilson down the field and hitting some sort of big play here. That's what Miami needs to stop.
Yeah, and I guess the shining spot of what Miami's doing is their defensive line's playing really well. I think Leonard Taylor looks like he's a real freak. I think Harvey's very good too. And, frankly, Florida State, I think, is getting much better up front. And obviously we know after the Jimbo era, it took a few years to rebuild that unit, and they were really bad. And they're better, but I still think they can be exposed by a really good defensive line in Miami to an extent. The thing is Jordan Travis has been very good evading pass rush. And as much as I think this Miami team will slow them down in the run, because I think they're going to beat them up a little bit up front in the run game, and just watching Florida State give up, I think, too many negative plays, I think that Jordan Travis, his escapability is a difference maker against this good D-line.
Yeah, and to that Florida State point, this Florida State offensive line was one of the units that was banged up the most. Like Robert Scott Jr. not playing. He's a guy that probably going in the day 2 of the NFL draft. They had tackles who just simply weren't ready to play ACC level football, and you saw that against Wake Forest. They could not pass protect against a team like Wake Forest that does not have world beaters coming off the edge. And now that they're healthy, and I said this to start, and I really do believe this. You look at what Florida State's been able to do. They caught a brutal stretch where they played Clemson, Wake Forest, NC State. Probably should have beaten the NC State team. Wake Forest, if you play that game a couple times, they're probably winning 6 or 7. Like, that was a pretty evenly matched game. And then Clemson is probably on another level, but Florida State was hanging around there too. But they played all 3 of those games significantly banged up. I mean, their biggest impact player on defense, Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett. Both Jared Verse was playing on like one leg. Fabian Lovett not even playing. They had guys in the secondary missing. Get the bye week. You get the 2 weeks of recovery. This Florida State team, quite frankly, I don't see them dropping a game the rest of the season. That's how good.
Yeah, and we look back when they were at full strength, they beat an LSU team that I think is proving that they're really good.
Yeah.
This LSU team, I don't know. They might even be able to give Bama kind of a run because they can play exceptional defense. So I'm kind of with you. I do like this Florida State team. And again, my only question is, can they control Miami up front? And if they can, I think it's, again, what you mentioned, if they can hit the big plays, they're probably going to be fine. And when you go back and watch some of these Miami games, like against Middle Tennessee, giving up multiple big 60-plus yard touchdown passes. One I think was like almost 90 or something. That you just can't have that because this Florida State team is way improved on the offense. The two Wilsons are great wide receivers, especially Johnny Wilson, a big body who's been a problem.
Mike Evans Jr. I mean, flipping to the Miami side, this offense under Josh Gaddis, let's just have this conversation right now. Josh Gaddis, in my mind, is quite an overrated offensive coordinator. He ran a very good offense for Michigan last year, but it never, as Michigan fans, and this might be a little salt from us, but it also is like that Michigan offense was never really his offense. He came in and wanted to run the speed in space, he spread you out and kind of throw the ball around the yard. Michigan never really ran that, and when Michigan had their most successful year, it was kind of back to what Jim wanted to do. 2 tight end sets, you run the ball a lot between the tackles, you kind of run that power run game. That's not Josh Gaddis' offense. Yeah, he was the OC during that time, but there was a clear kind of bashing of the heads, and Josh Gaddis comes to Miami. I still am not totally out on the fit. I think he just needs to get some rhythm with guys like Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia, and the wide receiver play has been not great.
The issue is watching Miami is they're running the ball pretty well at times, but they throw in these horrible plays where they get negative yardage and they set them off schedule, and that's like happening very consistently. So somehow he's going to need to figure out how to get some rhythm where they don't have a 5-yard loss on every drive, because that's killing them right now. Because again, I think you look at a Henry Parrish, he's playing really, really well. I think the offensive line is pretty solid for the most part. They just keep throwing in these negative plays. They're turning the ball over like madmen. But again, if you just cut that stuff out, their offense actually doesn't look bad. It's just there's something wrong with the rhythm and in sort of what's going on, because I feel like they should be better.
I mean, in my mind, you look at Miami and their body of work. We watched a couple games. Their biggest struggle and why their offense kind of fails to have that explosive capability that Miami fans are used to having is they were so reliant on Charleston Rambo last year at that wide receiver position to hit those chunk plays. You look at the wide receiver position this year. Xavier Restrepo was the guy. He goes down with an injury. Their leading receiver right now is Will Mallory at the tight end spot. And Will Mallory is a damn good tight end. But anytime you're an offense and you have your tight end leading the team in receiving yards, that tells you something about the wide receiver play. You look at the wide receivers. Rashad Smith, he can give you some juice. Frank Ladson's he hasn't been a bust, but he hasn't been like the guy I think a lot of Miami fans thought it would be. It's hard to have that explosive offense when you don't have that dude at the wide receiver spot that can hit those explosive plays, and Miami just doesn't have that guy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They're lacking that. Again, I think the negative plays are clearly hurting them, but there's just something. I mean, Josh Gaddis needs to figure it out, because I think if this doesn't change, I don't see how Cristobal can keep him, because I don't know that his leash is as long as people think. I just don't think Miami gives their coaches that much time, because right now they're too talented to be losing these games they're losing, and especially to be playing the offense they're playing. Because, again, I think their defense looks pretty good. They're just in constantly horrible spots by turning the ball over and not sustaining drives.
Yeah, I am with you on that. And the defense, I like the personnel. The explosive plays have killed them. And it's really hard to have good defensive stats when you're giving up those explosive plays. They're getting some turnovers. They're creating some havoc, but it's not on a consistent enough basis. And you mentioned it. I think the biggest matchup if Miami wants to stop Florida State is up front. Hakeem Mesidor, Leonard Taylor, those kind of guys. Now, Dill, getting to the pick. Florida State comes in on the road, 7.5-point favorites. What do you like here?
I mean, I don't factor in a ton for the road game in Miami. It might as well be a neutral site at that point.
That's true.
The Florida State fans are going to show up there. They're a real base. And
it's a night game, too, so the clubs are going to be ripping at Miami.
Exactly. So I don't know that the home field advantage, you're catching a ton of value picking on it. But, I mean, I'm kind of going Florida State. I wish it was inside a touchdown just because you're giving up that much. I do think there's a chance Miami does a good job keeping the score down. So that's my hesitation to bet it. But again, I do think Florida State is quite a bit better. I think what you mentioned, getting back healthy with a guy like Jared Verse, who they need, and Fabian Lovett, because again, that defense is talented, but yeah, it was banged up and still played pretty good, frankly, for the most part. Holding Wake to 31 solid, and holding NC State with Leary down to what they were able to do is good. So I don't know. I do like Florida State, but I wish it was inside a touchdown.
Give me Florida State. I'll wait till Saturday to see if it gets inside of a touchdown because I'm with you. I would like it inside that 7. That being said, this Florida State team, I think, is one of the most underrated teams in the whole entire country, even by the Vegas books. Like, yeah, you have like teams being overrated by the media. That doesn't mean anything. This Florida State team in the power rankings, they were playing like with half their team should be in the hospital. This Florida State team is healthy. This Florida State team is a damn good football team. You look at the losses, they were competitive in all of them, and they weren't healthy in any of them. This Miami team, you look at the eyeball test. How has Florida State played? How has Miami played? Florida State is the significantly better team. I think and then you look at the matchup. Florida State loves the explosive plays. They hit the explosive plays extremely well. Miami giving up explosive plays out the wazoo. I think Florida State rolls in this one. I think they could put up upwards of 40 points. And with this, how this Miami team and this offense is looking, I just don't know how Miami is scoring enough points against the Florida State defense.
You think Van Dyke matters much if he can be back?
That's an interesting conversation because when I was looking at who should be starting 2 years ago, I was always a Jake Garcia guy. I love Jake Garcia. That being said, 15 of 29 for 125 yards against the Virginia Cavaliers isn't inspiring much confidence. Tyler Van Dyke hasn't been that good either.
That's the thing I'm kind of saying. I don't think the quarterback play has been great with either of them, so I'm not sure it makes a huge difference because, again, now Van Dyke isn't the Van Dyke of 2021. That's
probably the biggest indictment of Josh Gaddis is you had Tyler Van Dyke, a guy that was supposed to be a first-round NFL draft pick, a guy that was one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC last year, and he's looked horrible. And I get it, the wide receiver play hasn't been great.
But that's Gaddis, too. He's the coach. He's got to get the guys rolling a little bit.
And he has some talent. Like, so a lot of these wide receivers were highly recruited out of high school. Like, it's not like these guys are schmoes. I think the development's been a problem, and they're just not hitting on some of the personnel guys. Give me Florida State. I don't care if it's 7.5. I'll take it at 7.5. I'm waiting. If it gets inside of a touchdown, then it's a hammer play. But again, this Florida State team is very, very good. I love the Seminoles here, and I think they win out the rest of the season. I am on the Florida State and Mike Norvell hype train. Again, we appreciate you guys checking us out. If you do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.